I have, be with me. I have a art of the week. I will come back in front. Well, I guess I could have. This is this lovely thing is a book of the hours. A book of the hours is a book that you would have in your home that had the prayers and psalms for different times of day. So it's called the divine office. And so in some church traditions, there's like morning prayers and noon prayers and evening prayers. And, you do them in a monastery, but people do them at home. You get up in the morning and you do the prayers. And before you go to bed at night, you do the prayers. And so if you are wealthy, you can hire someone to make you an awesome book of the hours with illustrations. Somebody asked, who is this lady in red? I don't know, but I wonder if she's the owner. Because, if you fork over enough money, they will put you in the book, a picture of you praying, which is cool. And so this is actually Catherine of Cleves' Book of the Hours. She lived around the year 1440. So about a generation after Chaucer, before printing presses. And this is actually part of the psalm. It's in Latin, but it says, Lord, you open my lips, and I will announce, and my mouth will announce your praise. You're probably familiar with this psalm. It's probably not translated exactly like that. But this lady is saying something in Latin, but it's the letters that are very, like everything looks like an M. It's very hard. I can't really tell what she's saying. It's got Mary and Jesus here. So I'm going to bring in, for several weeks, I'm going to bring in examples of these books of the hours. But this is Catherine of Cleves from 1440. I will set it over here. If you want to check it out, I'm not going to pass it around for time constraints. So you guys started the Canterbury Tales, and Ethan has informed us that it's got a really boring prologue, which, you know what? It's okay. Like, I ask you to give everything a chance that we read. I don't ask you to love everything the first time you read it. But I am hoping that I might point a few things out that might make it come to life. But I want to remind you of something. What you are reading is a translation. It was written in English, the Canterbury Tales, but it was written in English 600 years ago. And so 600 years ago, English was not, 1,000 years ago, English was something that you now need training to read. It's what we call Anglo-Saxon. All right. 600 years ago, English was something that we struggle to read. So you can, on your own, learn to read through Middle English, without training, but it's very difficult. And I am not talking about Shakespeare. Shakespeare is modern English. And you're like, no, he is not. Yes, he is. Shakespeare's modern English. So what I have for you is I have the beginning lines of the prologue in Middle English. And I found a guy online. Well, it's a record. It's a record album that they digitized. And it's him reading the Canterbury Tales in Middle English. So I downloaded the prologue to my phone. And I'm going to play a bit of it so you can read along and hear what it would sound like. Now, it was a record album that was digitized. I don't know if, here, can we start passing these around while there's going to be extras, but just take one and pass it down. Do you guys I can't believe I'm asking this question. Have you ever heard a record played on a record player? Okay. Are you familiar with the fact that sometimes records get little scratches and things, and it makes a crackly noise sometimes, like papers being crinkled? You hear that on this. It's a record. Okay. So don't be distracted. It's going to crackle. There's nothing wrong with the speaker. It's just the record. Okay. And I'm going to hit play, and then it's going to start immediately. So be ready, like looking at the first line. Or see if you can. Okay, here we go. Let's hope this works. It worked yesterday. I think I've got the volume. Okay, which one is volume up? It's the right-hand one. Okay. Okay. Do we all have it? The paper. Okay. Are we ready? I'll get it in a minute. Are we ready? So look at the paper, look at the first line, because I think he's just going to start right in. And if it's not very loud, I'm going to crank it up as fast as I can. Okay? 1, 2, 3, go.
Here begins the book of the Tales of Counterfeit. One that April, with his jurors daughter, the drucht of March, hath person to the water, and bow that every vine in such liquor of which thereto engendered is the floor. When Zephyrus ate with his sweat of wrath, his spirit hath in every horse and hath the tenderest office, and the younger Sunder hath in the rapid halva course runde, and snare the foolers make a melody that slepen out beneath with open ear, so pricketh him that during here courageous, then long and fall to go on pilgrimages, and Kalmers, for to second strangers to ferne halves, good in sundry landes, and specially from every sheerest ende of England to Canterbury thy wende, the holy blissful martyr for to sake that him hath opened when that thy were sake.
Okay, that's the end of what, here, we're just gonna, I don't know how to make it stop, so we're going to make it stop like that. Go away, how do I make, I don't know how to make you go away. Just stop playing. All right, so that is, that's what it sounded like originally. And are you able, though, for much of it to figure out what it's saying? Like, then people want to go on pilgrimages when it's spring, but it takes a little practice. With practice, you can read Middle English. I mean, you don't just naturally know how to pronounce it, but you can read it without speaking it out loud. But it takes a lot of practice. That's what Chaucer actually wrote. So the thing you're reading is a modernized version, but it still retains what Chaucer's meter and rhyme was. I think I told you last week that, you remember our Gawain poet, and he's like, you know what, we're going to alliterate. It's awesome to alliterate. And then everybody said, no, we're not going to alliterate. Sorry, Chaucer, or sorry, Gawain poet that we don't even know the name of. Mr. Gawain poet. And Chaucer at the same time writes like this. He's heard what's going on in Italy and all the poetry that's happening in Italy. Like, that's what we're doing. And what he did is the notorious iambic pentameter. So some of you have had this talk with me before. Some of you have not, but we are going to have just this very brief talk, because anytime we're reading poetry, it's good to know some of the terminology. I'm not going to make you scan it or anything. But poetry, when you say, what is the meter of a poem? It usually has two words. The first word tells you what the rhythm is. And the second word tells you how many units of that rhythm are in each line. Does that make sense? So, and we know how many sides in a pentagon? 5. So pentameter, automatically you know there's 5 of them, of whatever this is. And I would just tell you, iambic is whenever it's a unstressed and a stressed syllable. What do I mean by that? Well, every word has one syllable. Some words have more than one if they're really long words, but every word has one syllable that we say with more force. Michelle. I'm not Michelle. I'm Michelle. My second syllable is stressed. Alexander almost has 2. Alexander, but I would say and is Alexander. You're not Alexander, right? If you have a 1-syllable name, sorry. Dalton is the opposite of me, right? He's not Dalton, and I'm not Michelle. So we don't think about it, but when we speak, we usually have a word that's got a syllable with a stress. And so iambic meter is an unstressed and a stress. And these are the symbols that mean that. When they draw them over a line of poetry, this means you don't hit that syllable. This means you do hit it. Da-da. And if you have 5 of them, you get da 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 da. That's a line. Then the next line, da 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 da. And you choose your words to make the syllables fit. Yes, sir.
I have been reading the lines of this, and there's 11 syllables, not 10.
Well, not in every line. It can't be. There's got you. Okay, here's the thing. No poet does it perfectly because then you sound like Dr. Seuss. I love Dr. Seuss, but it's very much like a sing-songy. It almost hypnotizes you and mesmerizes you, because it just never changes. And when poets do that, that sounds juvenile and boring. So they like to switch up. Can you show me the line that has 11? Or
First one,
oh, when in April the sweet showers fall.
fall. Or 9. I don't know an odd number.
Okay, so I don't think that one's.
Was that in the translation?
Yes, they did the best they could. When in April the sweet showers fall. Yes, it only has 9.
Sorry, not 11.
So this does not alarm me. When we check the meter of poetry, we have to do a good lot of it because I'm going to go down a little bit, and I'm going to read.
7.
I'm going to read a few lines, and I'm going to read it very badly.
This one, the original works though.
Yes, yes, and much of this works too. Listen to me read part of the prologue again. Are we okay, guys? Is there a problem? I mean, I'm not being snarky. I mean, do you need something? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, and don't be the shade thing has been banging, like the furnace comes on. There's weird noises today. Or it's haunted. Or that. So I'm going to read this in a way that you shouldn't read poetry. I'm going to, like I'm chanting, like I'm casting a spell or something. I'm going to chant it. But just so you can hear the rhythm, okay? Here we go. It happened in that season that one day, in Southwark at the Tabard as I lay, ready to go, see, he mixed it up, on pilgrimage and start, for Canterbury most devout at heart. At night there came into that hostelry some 29 in a company of sundry folk happening then to fall in fellowship, and they were pilgrims all. I think I've done enough of that for now. And see, that's a one too. I think I've done enough of that for now. Here's why iambic pentameter gets used in English poetry so much. English is just brimful of iambic meter. It is super duper easy to make up iambic meter. It's not easy to write good poetry. I'm not claiming it's going to be good poetry when we make it up. But I went to Davenport to buy I need something with one syllable that I would buy. What to buy? I went to Davenport to buy a car. The parking lot was full of, I need da da da, was full of.
Salt and tar. I don't know. Salt and tar.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's off. I wasn't even going to try to rhyme. That's really good. See, it's really, really easy in English. English lends itself well to things falling in iambic pentameter or iambic meters, not necessarily pentameter. And so in every line, you have 5, we say iams. An iam is a da-da. It's an iam. You got 5 of them. That's what he's doing here. And it just won out. For a long time, this was poetry, right? It was not just iambic, but it was meter and form of some sort. And it's very challenging to fit your words, and give them that musical quality. But pretty much all song lyrics do it. Song lyrics must fit the tune, right? So they tend to have a meter. Anyway, that's all I'm going to do about meter. I told you I wasn't going to make you write anything else with that paper, and so I keep my promises. But if you want to write some iambic lines, I would be more than happy to read them. We'll just put it that way and experiment. But that's what it is. Da 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 da. That's the meter, and it's become like standard English. You don't have to write in English in that meter, but it's very easy to do so. Yes.
So I was just wondering about this. The third line and bathe every vein when
I don't have it. I'm going to peek over your shoulder.
basically in the third line,
Bathe in every vein in such liquor.
but in our translations there's that has power or
And the
is
of which virtue? That has the power. That's the line. That's the part.
virtue, but okay, so
That's
just,
the part. See, they had to change it a little
just
bit to make
formatted
it fit
differently, yeah.
to fit the meter. But of which virtue means the same thing as that has power.
okay.
That just comes in the next line. But that's what virtue used to mean. Not I'm a good person only, but it meant like the virtue of eyes is to see.
And sometimes
They have that power.
a bunch of words in the middle to make it
Yes.
like the next
Um,
line there's
So this is just to make us honestly try to give props to Mr. Chaucer because he did iambic pentameter for pages and pages and pages. Not all of it is. Some of it's actually in prose. Some of the tales aren't even in poetry at all, but most of them are. All right, let's tackle this boring prologue. How many pilgrims does Chaucer meet when, this is the first question I asked you, how many pilgrims does he meet up with? I read it just a minute ago, I think.
29, right?
29. A lot. And then he makes 30. And then the host decides to come with them. So they're a party of 31. And do you remember that the plan was the host says, hey, let's make it interesting. Let's have a contest. Everybody tell 2 stories on the way there. I don't think the host is included in this. So the 30 pilgrims, 2 stories on the way there, that's 60. 2 stories on the way back. 120 stories was the goal. Chaucer died and he did not write 120 stories. But it's not,
How many did he write?
we do not. I do not know. I don't think this is all. I'm full of I don't knows, but I don't think this is all. But it's not a crazy thing because I think I told you about this guy in Italy named Boccaccio, and he wrote a book where these young people were escaping from the city and went out to a country estate to not get the plague, and they were going to tell stories, and they told 100. Decameron, Deca, because there's 10 days and there's 10 stories for each day, and there's 100 stories in this baby. It's a big book. So it's not, this had already been done, but Chaucer had a day job and also wrote a bunch of other stuff, and he never actually got this done. So we're not sure what order even the stories come in. But here's what I want to do. Oh, well, first of all, why are the pilgrims traveling to Canterbury? It was in that beginning part too. To seek the holy, blissful martyr. Who is, what's his name?
He got like killed. Yeah, he was in the middle of the service. I don't know what his name is.
Thomas Becket.
Yeah, that
Becket, who was Archbishop of Canterbury, and King Henry said, who will rid me of this troublesome priest? And 4 knights were standing nearby, and they said, oh yeah, I got that. But then later he said, no, I didn't mean that. I was just venting, as we say. But no, they went and killed him in the church in Canterbury Cathedral. And so people would go and visit where he's buried. He's the holy, blissful martyr. He was considered a martyr because he was standing up for the rights of the church against the king. That was their beef. And okay, the other questions let's set aside. All right, I am going to read the part that you just heard in Middle English. I'm going to read the first section. And here's what I want you to think about. When is this story taking place and why is it taking place then? Because, you know, Chaucer could set it anytime he wants. So it's always a good idea, I feel like, you know, an author made a decision. This is when my story is going to take place. And my question is why? And I just want to ask you, listen while I talk. What kind of feeling does it give you? That's all I'm asking. All right, here we go. When in April the sweet showers fall and pierce the drought of March to the root, and all the veins are bathed in liquor of such power as brings about the engendering of the flower, when also Zephyrus with his sweet breath exhales an air in every grove and heath upon the tender shoots, And the young sun his half course in the sign of the ram has run. And the small fowl are making melody that sleep away the night with open eye. So nature pricks them and their heart engages. Then people long to go on pilgrimages, and palmers long to seek the stranger strands of far-off saints, hallowed in sundry lands, and specially from every shire's end of England to Canterbury they wend, to seek the holy blissful martyr, quick to give his help to them when they were sick. When is this happening? When are they traveling? In spring, in April, in the spring. What is there about spring that makes this a good setting? Yeah.
Awakening.
Okay. Awakening. It doesn't look like it today, but presumably we are supposed to be experiencing spring. So they tell me. So everything comes back to life. What about coming back to life might be connected with, and people long to go on pilgrimages?
That's the point of a pilgrimage to be awakened about in your faith, to be awakened in your faith.
Okay. The reason we're going is because we're looking for spiritual awakening, perhaps. This is a very lofty reason. Is there a non-lofty reason why someone might want to go on a little trip in the spring? What do you think, Karsten?
Because it's not winter, not cold, it's not summer, it's not hot, and it's not the harvest season when they've got a bunch of work to do.
Yeah, basically, I mean, this is very rudimentary, but you get sick and tired of sitting inside all winter. Do you know what I mean? We get a little stir crazy. In Alaska, they say cabin fever. People get cabin fever, and you want to get out. Like, dude, you want to go on a road trip? Yeah. Let's go to Canterbury. Yeah. But if that's true, is it possible that some of these people are traveling not for Ethan's lofty reason, but for Karsten's very secular, normal reason? Maybe some of them. I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just saying, just because they're going to see the holy, blissful martyr doesn't make them all spiritually devoted people. They may just, yeah, I'm up for anything, whatever. Get out of town for a few days, chat with some new people, eat out, it's fun. Tell some stories. It's fun. So I'm going to throw out there that these people might have very mixed reasons for doing this, right? Chaucer is obviously the author of this poem. Chaucer is also a character in the poem, right? He says, I. In Southwark at the Tabard, which is the inn, as I lay ready to go on pilgrimage and start for Canterbury, most devout at heart. What does Chaucer, the character, why is he going on a pilgrimage? The lofty reason, most devout at heart. I want to go visit the shrine of Becket. And he says, well, I'm there, I meet up with this other group of people, 29 other people to be exact, of various sorts, right? They're not all the same. Now, I didn't ask you this question, so I'm going to ask this kind of can you remember what you read, sort of? Chaucer, the character, the narrator, what sorts of things does he tend to notice about his fellow travelers? Like what sorts of things does he describe about them? Where does he get his information?
Well, from what I took out, he had a lot of detail, which I love. But there were some people who were kind of I don't want to say
Questionable.
Yeah, very questionable.
Questionable.
So questionably.
You can say that. Does he describe? Does he describe appearance or actions or like what? Okay, that's a very good word. Demeanor. How do they behave? How do they comport themselves?
How Christian do they look?
Well, yeah, you know what? Honestly, but he also sometimes flat out tells you a lot of details about their physical appearance, doesn't he? we have, I think your page numbers may be the same as mine. There was, I'll throw out a page number and we'll see. I'm trying to find one where it's just, well, let's go back to the beginning and start with the night. The night has a little bit of a mix of description. But our narrator says, briefly, when the sun had gone to rest, I'd spoken to them all upon the trip and was soon one with them in fellowship. Chaucer, our narrator, is very gregarious. He gets on well with everybody. He, well, I'll ask you later, is he judgmental? We'll find out. But he seems to get along well with everybody. Okay. So he says it's reasonable to tell you, what does he say he's going to describe? What their condition was, the full array of each of them as it appeared to me. This is Chaucer, the narrator. This is my impression. This is the impression I got from each of these people, according to profession and degree, and what apparel they were writing in. I'm going to tell you how they seemed and what they look like, how they're dressed and everything. Go ahead, Rhett.
Did people know who Chaucer was? Like, was he somewhat famous?
Chaucer was fairly well known in his lifetime, yes.
I read the beginning, and at one point he served the king, and he had his own special. Like the king gave him that name. I think it was in Latin.
Oh, I
It was
don't remember.
Delectus, Wallatus, Noster, our dear beloved valet.
Oh, here we go. Yes, there it is on page 12, Roman numeral 12 of my, yes. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, he was in court circles and also was known as an author. Okay, I am going to read the description of the knight now because he's the first one, and also you read the Knight's Tale for this week. Let's check out this guy. And at a night, I'm on page 4 for me, but the night is the first one he describes. And at a night, I therefore will begin. There was a knight, a most distinguished man, who from the day on which he first began to ride abroad had followed chivalry, truth, honor, generousness, and courtesy. He had done nobly in his sovereign's war and ridden into battle, no man more, as well in Christian as in heathen places, and ever honored for his noble graces. When we took Alexandria, he was there. He often sat at table in the chair of honor above all nations when in Prussia. In Lithuania he had ridden, in Russia, no Christian man so often of his rank. When in Granada Algeciras sank under assault, he had been there. And in North Africa, raiding Benamaran. In Anatolia he had been as well, and fought when Aeas and Italia fell. For all along the Mediterranean coast he had embarked with many a noble host. In 15 mortal battles he had been, and jousted for our faith at Tramacene, thrice in the lists, and always killed his man. This same distinguished knight had led the van once with the Bey of Balat, doing work for him against another heathen Turk. He was of sovereign value in all eyes, and though so much distinguished, he was wise, and in his bearing modest as a maid. He never yet a boorish thing had said, in all his life to any, come what might. He was a perfect, gentle knight. Now, did he talk about his physical appearance at all? What did he almost completely only talk about?
Who he was.
What he does.
Yeah, and his character a little bit at the end. He's modest, he's not boorish, he's a true perfect knight, but the vast majority of it was what? He fought here, he fought here, he fought here, he fought here, he fought here. When this fell, he was there. How does Chaucer know? Chaucer, the narrator. How would he find that out?
Sounds like a lot like the Crusades, in my opinion.
Yeah, but how would he know the detail? How would he be able? You meet a person you did not know, and then later you can say, yeah, he's been here and here and here and here and here. How did you find out?
He might have talked about it.
Talked about it. He talked about it. Now that doesn't mean he was showing off. Maybe he was asked about it.
It did say he was modest.
He says he was modest, or maybe he was well known. See, but Chaucer seems to know a lot about this guy. and where he's been. How did he find out? But we got to remember something. He's not alone. His son is with him. Let me read about the squire. Don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole prologue. So don't, like, oh my goodness, is she going to read about every? No, she's not. He had his son with him, a fine young squire. Listen to this guy. A lover and cadet, a lad of fire, with locks as curly as if they had been pressed. He was some 20 years of age, I guessed. In stature, he was of a moderate length, with wonderful agility and strength. He'd seen some service in the cavalry in Flanders and Artois and Picardy, and had done valiantly in little space of time, in hope to win his lady's grace. He was embroidered like a meadow bright, all full of freshest flowers, red and white. Singing he was, or fluting all the day. He was as fresh as is the month of May. Short was his gown, the sleeves were long and wide. He knew the way to sit a horse and ride. He could make songs and poems and recite, knew how to joust and dance, to draw and write. He loved so hotly that till dawn grew pale, he slept as little as a nightingale. Courteous he was, lowly and serviceable, and carved to serve his father at the table. Is the son exactly like the father?
No.
No. How is the son different from the father?
He sounds like a child, first of all.
You,
Sorry.
well, okay,
he
you
sounds like a
back that up.
teenager.
Okay, yes, I
Hotly in love, like
hotly in love.
Yeah.
He's and I'm good at I can sing and dance. And like, how does Chaucer the narrator know? Apparently, is he doing some singing and dancing? Did he bring his little flute along? Is he showing off his artwork? Is he bragging about his dad? You see, here's what I picture. He's this guy. Make sure my selfie, make sure my golden curls are gorgeous. All right, this is the squire. And the dad is very sedate. As a matter of fact, I feel like there's a thing about the knight I didn't read. I'm sorry. Speaking of his equipment, he possessed fine horses, but he was not gaily dressed. He wore a fustian tunic. Are we okay back there? Okay. He wore a fustian tunic. It means it's not expensive. Stained and dark, with smudges where his armor had left mark. Just home from service. He had joined our ranks to do his pilgrimage and render thanks. The guy hasn't even gone home to put on a decent tunic. He's still wearing his stained tunic from the campaign he's been on, and he's going to give thanks at the shrine of the martyr. And so, but the son is dressed to the nines, as they used to say. Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I stole your thunder. This is what makes the prologue interesting. Okay, it's just this catalog of characters, and they're each described. But when you start thinking, well, how would he know that? And how this is his son? How is the son different from the dad? It starts to blossom for you a little bit. I want to pick out a couple more. I'd really like to read the descriptions of the people whose stories you're going to read. All right, for next week. And so after the squire, it's on page 6 for me. It says there also was a nun, a prioress. Now, we may have a problem because I was informed. No, I don't think we'll have a problem. If you have your book, would you look in the table of contents right now and make sure the prioress's tale is listed? In mine, it's in Group B. It's on the first page of the table of contents. Do you all have the prioress's tale? If you have your book with you?
I'm still looking for it.
Because you read? Is that a yes or no? Okay. There are Neville Coghill editions that are missing the prioress's tale. Apparently. Okay, I'm relieved. Okay, and that's something else. Let's just go there before I forget to tell you. If somebody has a prologue, please read it. So if I say read the prioress's tale and you see the prioress has a prologue, read that too. Also, The Wife of Bath has a prologue longer than her story. You need to read The Wife of Bath's prologue. I didn't ask you any questions about it. It's not in the reading guide. Read the prologue. please, oh please, read The Wife of Bath's prologue. This lady never shuts up. I mean, we know more about this lady than any other person in the Canterbury Tales because she just spills her guts. She's very open. Okay, let's go back to this prioress in the prologue. Remember, a prioress, she's in charge of an abbey, a convent. She's in charge of nuns. Here's the prioress. There also was a nun, a prioress. Her way of smiling, very simple and coy. Her greatest oath was only by St. Loy, and she was known as Madame Eglantine. And well she sang a service, with a fine intoning through her nose, as was most seemly. And she spoke daintily in French, extremely, after the school of Stratford at Bow. French in the Paris style, she did not know. She speaks in the French of the English provinces, not in the French of France. Do you see what I mean? She thinks she just gives her little French phrases, but she speaks French like an English lady, not in the Paris style. At meat, her manners were well taught withal. No morsel from her lips did she let fall, nor dipped her fingers in the sauce too deep. But she could carry a morsel up and keep the smallest drop from falling on her breast. For courtliness, she had a special zest, and she would wipe her upper lip so clean that not a trace of grease was to be seen upon the cup when she had drunk. To eat, she reached a hand sedately for the meat. She certainly was very entertaining, pleasant and friendly in her ways, and straining to counterfeit a courtly kind of grace, a stately bearing fitting to her place, and to seem dignified in all her dealings. As for her sympathies and tender feelings, she was so charitably solicitous. She used to weep if she but saw a mouse caught in a trap, as if it were dead or bleeding. And she had little dogs she would be feeding with roasted flesh or milk or fine white bread. And bitterly she wept if one were dead or someone took a stick and made it smart. She was all sentiment and tender heart. Her veil was gathered in a seemly way. Her nose was elegant, her eyes glass gray. Her mouth was very small but soft and red. Her forehead certainly was fair of spread, across almost a span across the brows, I own. She was indeed by no means undergrown. Her cloak, I noticed, had a graceful charm. She wore a coral trinket on her arm, a set of beads with gaudies tricked in green. Whence hung a golden brooch of brightest sheen, on which there was first graven a crowned A, and lower, Amor vincit omnia, love conquers all. The prioress, she's a nun, in charge of a group of nuns. She's, oh, thank you. Oh, I'm just making up. Oh, my parents are so good. And yes. Oh, he's my little dog. I'm like Paris Hilton. And I have a little dog in my bag. And I just like feed my little dog. And I have the little bracelet and it says love conquers all. You're a nun. Could be God's love, but this is not what people usually use that phrase for. What's up with the prioress? Can you think of an adjective that describes a lady like this? Okay, she's preppy.
Nervous.
She's maybe a little high strung. I was thinking prissy, if you know, like she's just very, very dainty and prissy. And you're a nun. What do you? And I think it's very telling. She wants to seem and she wants to counterfeit a kind of grace. Like she wants everybody to know she's upper crust, high class lady. Not that she's holy, right? Do you see? But do you see? Chaucer doesn't say that. He doesn't say, yeah, there's this prissy prior. She's kind of full of herself and overly dainty. He doesn't say it. He describes her, and then we take it and run with it. And that's what he expects us to take and run with. It's like, what's up with this lady? She doesn't sound like she belongs in a convent to me. But the skill of the prologue is Chaucer never says it. We walk away with a picture, but then we look back and it's like, you never really said that's what she's like, but we know that's what she's like. Yeah, Kyle.
So just like crying for the mouses in the trap,
Mhm.
eating her dog's meat.
Yes, maybe not the mice. But she loves her dogs too. So keep this in mind. When you find out what story the prioress tells, some of you have already read this story because some of you read, Dalton, maybe the Chaucer storybook. we read the prioress's tale, and it's little Hugh of Lincoln. Okay, but but just the person who's overly sentimental tells the story. So that's the lovely thing. That's why I'm reading some of these descriptions. Then when you read their stories, like, oh shoot, and that's exactly the sort of story that this lady would tell, isn't it? So that's the prioress. I'm going to have you also read. This Tale of Sir Topaz is actually Chaucer's story. I don't want to tell you anything about it, but it's a big joke. There's a big joke to do when it's Chaucer's turn to tell a story. Just you tell me next week what the joke is. The nun's priest, we know nothing about. It just says another nun, the secretary at her cell, the secretary of the prioress, was riding with her and 3 priests as well. They get no description, but they tell stories. And the nun's priest's tale is one of the most famous of the Canterbury Tales. But let's hit the wife of Bath. Oh my goodness. I don't know what to say.
Does anybody else think that Chaucer might have had an interest in the priors? Or in the yeah.
Maybe. Although it strikes me as a little bit mocking in tone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's the only thing. It doesn't sound admiring.
Yeah.
She was so beautiful and courtly and graceful. It was more, but that's an interpretive thing. You see, I mean, Chaucer gives us what he gives us, and then we run with it. And I can't tell you, you would be wrong to read that into it. Okay, the wife of Bath is on page 15 for me. She's after the doctor, a worthy woman from beside Bath City. Okay, I'm going to read her thing. A worthy woman from beside Bath City was with us, somewhat deaf, which was a pity. In making cloth, she showed so great a bent, she bettered those of Ypres, I'm not sure I say that right, and of Ghent. Listen to this part. In all the parish, not a dame dared stir towards the altar steps in front of her. And if indeed they did, so wrath was she as to be quite put out of charity. When she goes to church to offer things on the altar, don't get in front of me. I am first. I am first. Her kerchiefs were of finely woven ground. I dared have sworn they weighed a good 10 pound, the ones she wore on Sunday on her head. Her hose were of the finest scarlet red and gartered tight. Her shoes were soft and new. Does she have money or no money? Money. New shoes, beautiful tight. She's got money. Bold was her face, handsome and red in hue. A worthy woman all her life, what's more, she'd had 5 husbands, all at the church door, apart from other company in youth. No need to speak of that, forsooth. And she had thrice been to Jerusalem, seen many strange rivers and passed over them. She'd been to Rome and also to Boulogne, St. James of Compostela and Cologne, and she was skilled in wandering, by the way. All right. She's been on pilgrimage 3 times to Jerusalem, for crying out loud. She's been to all the shrines, and she's skilled in wandering. She likes to get out. She had gap teeth, set widely, truth to say. Easy on an ambling horse she sat, well wimpled up. She's got like clothes up her neck. And on her head a hat as broad as is a buckler or a shield. She had a flowing mantle that concealed large hips. Her heels spurred sharply under that. In company, she liked to laugh and chat and knew the remedies for love's mischances, an art in which she knew the oldest dances. This is a woman. Can you think of an English phrase we use for? I don't know how to fish for this phrase. Like somebody who's got a lot of life experience, we'll say. Worldly. Maybe. What do you know what I'm thinking of, Mrs. Gamble? She's. Yeah. Do people still say she's been around the block?
Yeah.
She's been around the block. This means she's been around. She gets around. And not necessarily in a good Beach Boy way. She gets around. So this is why I really, really, really need you to read her prologue, even though it's going to be tempting to just Mrs. Ferguson will never know, and blah, blah, blah. And there's no questions on it, I know. But most of what we find out about her is in her prologue, because she's going to tell you how she ended up with 5 husbands, and how she ended up deaf. Hint: one of her husbands did it. So, if that makes you want to read the Wife Best prologue. So she seems like maybe she might be one of the second category, the Karsten Pilgrim category. She's just out to see and be seen and get around, and maybe she's on the prowl for another husband. Unclear. Right above the beginning of the Wife of Beth, I just want to throw this in because I love this comment. He's talking about the doctor. I'm not going to read about the doctor, but at the very end, the last 4 lines of the doctor's, it says, "Yet he was rather close as to expenses, and kept the gold he won in pestilences." He's a doctor, he treats people who are ill and they pay him. Gold stimulates the heart, or so we're told. He therefore had a special love of gold. Gold is good for your, to wear gold trinkets. It's good for your heart, they say. So he had a special love of gold. He's just greedy. Therefore, he had a special love of gold. All right. So right now, it's not seeming like a very good batch of people. I got to throw out the pardoner. This is on page 21 for me. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says, this is his physical description, and, well, I'll let you judge. "This pardoner had hair as yellow as wax, hanging down smoothly like a hank of flax. In driblets fell his locks behind his head, down to his shoulders, which they overspread. Thinly they fell like rat tails, one by one." And greasy ones, which is hard to do. Okay. "His wallet lay before him on his lap, brim full of pardons come from Rome, all hot." Pardoners sell, like indulgences, pardons, papal pardons. And they're not supposed to sell them, they're supposed to give them to repentant people. But it got to the point where some people would just pay money, like, give me the pardon, give me the indulgence, I'm paying money. He has, and this was before the printing press, so that our modern updater, like hot off the presses, as we would say, brimful of pardons, all hot. He had the same small voice a goat had got. And then skipping down a few lines, "For in his trunk he had a pillowcase, which he asserted was Our Lady's veil." He's got a pillowcase. They say, "Oh, it's Mary, it's Mary's veil." He said he had a gobbet of the sail St. Peter had the time when he made bold to walk on waves till Jesu Christ took hold. He had a cross of metal set with stones, and in a glass a rubble of pig's bones. What does he pretend they are? What does he think? What does he tell people these bones really are? Why does he have a vial of pig's bones?
Wait,
It couldn't be.
no.
No.
Can't
No.
really.
Please, no.
What?
No.
What do people use? What would people carry bones around for in the Middle Ages?
Saints' relics.
Oh.
Are they?
What? That's
No, he gathers random bones and he passes them off as saints' relics.
Oh, that's why you said he had a cross of metal set with stones.
And in a glass, a rubble of pig's bones. And with these relics, anytime he found some poor up-country parson to his town, in one short day, in money down, he drew more than the parson in a month or two. He could make 2 months' worth of parson wages in one day selling his relics. Oh, yeah. So the partner, he is low. So at this moment, I will stop. Some of you already know this. I know the Gamels know this very well. But I told you last week that I can't do the movie thing because my dad's having surgery and I have to leave immediately. But what we were going to do, and what you should totally do, and I feel very good recommending this, is watch a movie called The Knight's Tale. It only has a couple of marginally questionable parts. Heath Ledger is the star. Well, marginally, they're not bad. It's PG-13. So here's the thing. I want to talk about this movie, a couple of things to point out. But the first one is in this totally made up story, which has nothing to do with the actual Knight's Tale that you read. So you're not going to Palamon in our seat or not in this movie at all. But Chaucer is. And in this movie, Chaucer has a run-in with some guys that I will not tell you why, but a summoner and a pardoner. And he says in this movie, I will eviscerate you in fiction. I am going to write a story and you're going to be looking so bad. And the joke is the pardoner in the Canterbury Tales is jerk and he's a lowlife. And so the joke of this movie is that Chaucer, the character in the movie, threatens to write the Canterbury Tales and threatens to throw the pardoner under the bus, which makes it humorous. It's humorous for another reason too that I'll talk about in a minute. Yes, sir.
It's funny. So like, I wonder if he was like at this point like friends with everybody. He's like, guys, guess what? I'm scamming all these people and selling them pig bones.
Yeah. See, that good. I wanted to ask that. How does Chaucer, the pilgrim, the narrator, know? Apparently, the guy just those country bumpkin parsons. You pass anything off on them. I got these pig's bones down there. I make a pretty off of them, and I stop at the next farm and just gather some more, and go to the next town. I'm making a mint. I have a feeling he was bragging about it. How else would Chaucer know? Bragging about being low, and how gullible other people are, and how much money he's making off of them. I know. So I want to move on to the Knight's Tale, but before I do, and because we only have half an hour left, oh my gosh, I want to talk about two guys that restore our faith in humanity. They're on page 16 and 17 for me. The parson and his brother, the plowman. The parson says there was and poor, the parson to a town, yet he was rich in holy thought and work. He also was a learned man, a clerk, who truly knew Christ's gospel and would preach it devoutly to parishioners and teach it. Benign and wonderfully diligent and patient when adversity was sent. And skipping down, he neglected not in rain or thunder, in sickness or in grief, to pay a call on the remotest, whether great or small. Upon his feet and in his hand a stave. This noble example to his sheep he gave, that first he wrought and afterwards he taught. And it was from the gospel he had caught those words. And he would add this figure too, that if gold rust, what then will iron do? And then skipping down at the end, it says, he was a shepherd and no mercenary. And at the very end of his description, it says, Christ and his 12 apostles and their lore he taught, but followed it himself before. There was a plowman with him there, his brother. Many a load of dung one time or other he must have carted through the morning dew. He was an honest worker, good and true, living in peace and perfect charity. And as the gospel bade him, so did he, loving God best with all his heart and mind, and then his neighbor as himself. Repined at no misfortune, slacked for no content, for steadily about his work he went, to thrash his corn, to dig, or to manure, or make a ditch. And he would help the poor for love of Christ, and never take a penny if he could help it. And as prompt as any, he paid his tithes in full when they were due, on what he owned, and on his earning too. These brothers, one of them in religious orders, one of them just a farmer. Great guys. They have different callings, but they both live their calling, right? The one who's a parson is a good shepherd to his sheep. And the one who's a farmer works hard at the job he's been given. Like, thank goodness, Chaucer. Thank you for giving me a couple of decent characters. We get a cross section here. They're not all bad. They're not all good. Is the prioress bad? She's just odd for her station in life. Do you know what I mean? So this is the crew that we get to meet in the prologue. So is it the most astounding literature you've ever read? Maybe you don't feel that it is still, but hopefully it's a little less boring, maybe just a little bit. But let's dive into the Knight's Tale. What is there about the story he tells that is suitable for the fact of who he is? Why would a knight tell this story? What's in this story that would appeal to a knight to tell the story? Fighting. There's tons of fighting. He gives detailed, at one place, he gives a detailed description, right before the big tournament where it's the 100 guys against the 100 guys, winner takes Emily. By the way, I'm probably just going to ramble. The questions I asked you were basically about the plot. Did anybody have trouble following the plot? Okay, I'm going to assume that we're good there. There's this detailed description of their getting armored up. And see if I can find. Okay. I'm on page 60, if it's the same for you. And that was just the case with Palamon. With him there rode his comrades, many a one. Some were in coat of mail, and others wore a breastplate and a tunic, little more. Some carried heavy plating, front and back, and some a Prussian shield to ward attack. Some cased their legs in armor, thigh to heel. Some bore an axe, and some a mace of steel. There's never a new fashion, but it's old. And so they armed themselves as I have told, each man according to his own opinion. How would the knight know how people at a tournament would suit themselves up? He's been there. He's been there. He knows exactly. Oh, how some wear this sort of armor, some wear that sort of armor, some carry a mace, some carry. He's in his element, describing what these guys do. Is there anything, I'll just ask it this way. Is there anything strange about this story in general? Does anything strike you as strange? And I'll narrow my question down if that's not good enough.
Brothers, right?
Well, they said they're cousins.
The cousins are really weird. They're so weird. Like, I don't know. I guess I just don't get it because they both got this weird madly in love.
This obsession with Emily?
Yeah, like first of all, why? She must be really beautiful.
She is really beautiful.
So, and second of all, they're just so weird and.
Is the weird part partly, Ethan, that they argue so vehemently over this woman they've never met?
And then they're just like, oh, you're my brother/cousin, and I don't know.
It's hard. I don't think that the people hearing it would have thought it's as weird as we do, that part. And here's why. Maybe you know this. The knightly, okay, think Dante and Beatrice. But think if Dante were a knight and Beatrice were the lady that he fights for, okay? Dante definitely turned that into something completely different, but it was very common for a knight to have a lady love. He doesn't really know her. Do any of you know what I mean when I say Don Quixote?
Yeah.
Dulcinea. There's a great musical, but also the book is enormously long, but it's well worth it. It's ridiculous. It's got all sorts of potty humor, and it's just disgusting. Anyway, boys love it, and it's really funny. But it's about this knight, Don Quixote, and he's read so many books about knights that he's gone insane. This book was written sort of after the heyday of knighthood. All right, when knights and castles and a thing was old-fashioned and could be mocked a little bit. Okay, so this Don Quixote, he read so much knight stories that he got whacked. And there's this lady in his town, and she's like a barmaid or something, and he thinks she's a grand lady, and she's his lady love, and she doesn't even know him. So he goes off on these quests, and he hooks up with a secondhand Sancho Panza, who's his right hand, his squire. And he basically says, I'm going to conquer lands, and I'll give you, you can be king of these lands. And Sancho thinks Don Quixote's a little whacked, but it's like, okay, whatever, I'm looking for a job. Sounds good. And so they travel around the country, and they, famously, he thinks a windmill is a giant, and he decides to joust at it. It doesn't work. No. So anyway, Cervantes the author of this book is making fun of this. This, you're obsessed about this woman you don't even know, but it was a knightly, courtly love tradition thing that after a while people looked back on it and they said, that's messed up. what is the deal with that? And they didn't really love it. So they would see this more as a kind of nostalgic joke sort of thing, not as weird. Here, let me be more specific. Where and when do these people live in the story? They do not. Who is the king? And what town is he from? And what town is he fighting? Oh, I'm so glad I brought it up. Let's take a look at the beginning of The Knight's Tale. If I can ever find it. Okay, here we go. Stories of old have made it known to us. There was once a duke called Theseus, ruler of Athens. There in ancient Greece. Athens attacks Thebes. Do you remember, guys? On the night before the big battle, everybody goes to pray, and everybody's got a prayer. Who do they pray to?
They pray to Mars. They said.
Mars and Venus and Artemis.
Which I thought it was so weird. It was like, wait a second. Like, I mean, it's Athens, but like,
Indeed.
I didn't realize we were.
but I didn't know when it started. It's like.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This almost seems like anachronistic.
It is completely and utterly anachronistic. And before I forget, so this is the funny thing about this movie. Those of you who've seen it, the Ugly Gamels know. Okay, I'm going. So I don't want to. Oh, please watch it. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But there's a female character whose clothes get increasingly more not medieval at all, shall we say? And then the soundtrack. I'm just going to leave it at that. From the first moment, the soundtrack it makes me want to go home and watch it this afternoon. It's not what you would expect for a night movie. We'll just say that, okay? It's anachronistic, and the joke of the movie is, in addition to the partner thing, the Knight's Tale and the Canterbury Tales is anachronistic. They're jousting in ancient Greece. What, in armor? No, just with each other. And so is the movie. So it will be a hoot. I'm just saying, it's fun. So here's the question. I feel like we have various options here. Did Chaucer, the author of the Canterbury Tales, not know that they didn't joust and wear armor in ancient Greece? That's option one. Don't answer till you hear all the options. Option two, does the knight telling the story not know that there weren't knights in ancient Greece? Or, like that one, does Chaucer, the author of this poem, seem like an ignorant sort? Okay, one is gone. Two, do you think the knight, keeping in mind he's traveled all over the place, he's very well traveled, is he historically ignorant enough, who's been in the Middle East and fought? Do you think he would have no knowledge of, I mean, he seems to know a lot about ancient Greece. Like he knows all about the gods. And so if we're left with three, why randomly? Couldn't this story work okay in medieval England?
But it wouldn't be as cool though. It's more cool to have some anachronism.
Here, okay, I asked you guys where they pray, who they pray to. They go to these three temples, right? Temple of Mars, Temple of Venus, Temple of Diana. And I know I want to read about the Mars temple is amazing. The description of Mars temple. If it were in medieval England, who would they all be praying to? Okay, so the same God. What happens after they all pray? Like the gods each hear their prayers and they each something happens after the prayer, like it shakes or whatever, the fire flames up, and it's like, oh, your wish is granted. And then they all collect on Olympus. I just promised this guy this. Well, I just promised Tim this. Well, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to work out a compromise somehow. Could they do that if it were one God? Like it wouldn't be the same. Do you see? You couldn't have the same outcome if it weren't pagan. Here, but why would the knight then include jousting? Why didn't he just tell a story about ancient Greece without knights? Because he's a knight. Because you know how they say, write about what you know, tell what you know? Like, what does he know? I know knights. That's my whole life. It's my livelihood. So he's got to put it in there. He gets both. Do you know what I mean? He gets a world where the gods can argue over who's going to grant. And then you have this wonderful, the one prays to get the girl, the one prays to win the battle. Oops. Should have prayed to get the girl. And did he win the battle? Yes. Did he get the girl? No. He gets the girl, he wins the battle, and poor Emily, well, she has to get married, even though that was not her first choice. But she did say, let the one who loves me most. Who loves you most? The one who prays to get you or the one who prays to win the battle? He gets the girl. So, you have this lovely, like the gods talking to each other at the end. Couldn't do that with a Christian God. But couldn't have knights in Christendom, or you could have knights in Christendom, but you can't have the gods if it's not ancient Greece. It's really fun that he did this. Let's look at that Temple of Mars, because Karsten brought that up. This is the most amazing description. Remind me, who is Mars the god of? War. So he's praying to Mars to win the battle. And I got to tell you, the first couple of times, like I've read this a good many times now. I've read all of them, but not all of them a bunch of times, because usually I reread the ones I'm teaching, right? They're all pretty interesting, but I usually read this one. I've read a lot of times, and I just don't know that it really hit me until this time. These temple descriptions are amazing. So just the Temple of Venus, I'm not going to read the whole thing. This is on page 55. It's what the pictures are on the walls. It says, Venus has her, I almost, okay. More than I can mention or recount. And it's the pictures there. Truly the whole of Cytherea's mount, where Venus has her dwelling above all her other playgrounds, figured on the wall, with all her garden in its joyful dress. Nor was forgotten her porter idleness, nor yet Narcissus, beauty's paragon in times gone by, nor doting Solomon, nor the unmastered strength of Hercules, Medea and her enchantments next to these, and Circe's too, and Turnus fierce and brave, and rich King Croesus captive and a slave, that men might see that neither wit nor wealth, beauty or cunning, bravery or health can challenge Venus or advance their worth above that against that goddess who controls the earth. Okay. This is a poem Chaucer the author is writing around 1400 for public consumption. This isn't going to be for schools. It's not highbrow literature. Do you know what I mean? It's just like buy copies on the street sort of poetry. And he's listed Venus, Narcissus, Hercules, Circe, Medea, Turnus, Croesus. Everybody knows who these are. It's common knowledge. And for most of you, it is Turnus, who fought against Aeneas, but it's not anymore. Like, you guys are really lucky. I'm just going to throw this out. You can read a list like that. It's like, yeah, got it. Medea. Some of you have read that play with me. Oh my goodness.
So good.
Or maybe we'll read it with me someday. It's amazing what people used to know. And, we do know stuff, but we only know the stuff that passes away. Like we know, I don't know, back in my day, it was what records on the top of the charts or what have you. Do you know what I mean? Is short or long hair in fashion this year? Who cares? And you don't know stuff that doesn't change. But let's look at the Temple of Mars on the next page, because it is amazing. First, on the walls, a forest with no plan, inhabited by neither beast nor man, was painted. Tree trunks, knotted, gnarled, and old, jagged and barren, hideous to behold. There is a forest with no plan. It's not like a Christmas tree farm where it's got the nice little rows, you know? A forest with no plan, inhabited by neither beast nor man, gnarled, old, hideous tree trunks. Why is this painted on the walls of the temple of the god of war?
Maybe that's because that's what war does.
What, to unpack that, what does war do?
War destroys nations. If you think about it, war. I don't know. Take a look at the Middle East, like the suffering that happens with war. People, nobody inhabits it.
So it leaves behind a barren wasteland, uninhabited, possibly radioactive, hideous to behold. Another thing is war a fit place for living creatures? Living creatures go to war. I mean, that's what war is, obviously. But it's not a fitting, permanent place. Does that make sense? You know, it's not. Human beings don't belong in war. It's an anomaly. It's not something we want. Okay, let me keep going. I'm going to skip down. In at the doors, a northern glimmer shone onto the walls. For windows, there were none. Why are there no windows in the Temple of Mars? Dark?
Would anyone want to see
You don't wanna
what
see
actually
war.
goes
Yeah.
on inside a war?
Is it so people can't see in, or is it so they can't see out, or both? If you're trapped in war, can you see the bigger picture sometimes? Maybe not. Is this something people want to look at? Maybe not. I mean, I don't think it has to be either or. I could be both, could be true. One scarce discerned a light, it was so scant. It's dark. What happens in the dark? This is a very stupid sounding question, and it's got a very obvious answer. What happens in the dark?
Murders.
Well, no, I mean more generally. Always happens in the dark. What always happens in the dark? Yeah.
Stumble,
What?
stumble.
Yeah, you can't see where you're going. I mean, murders sometimes, perhaps, but hopefully not. Always you can't see where you're going. In war, do they know where they're going? I mean, I kind of mean that literally, like in the middle of a battle, when it's raging around you, you don't know what's going on. But also sometimes wars are waged and they don't see the outcome. They don't know where they're going, sort of metaphorically. The doors were of eternal adamant, very strong stone. Eternal adamant, and vertically clenched, and clenched across for greater strength with many an iron boss. The door is eternal, hardest stone there is, and bolted shut. You gotta,
It's like a bunker.
it's like a bunker. Again, is it to keep people out or to keep people in? Unclear. It's very disturbing. And for me, and I made a little acronym. Can I remember it? Oh, I can't remember it. Palamon is peaceful and our seat is angry. Oh, it worked. Palamon is the one who goes to Venus and our seat is the one who goes. I invented that yesterday because I was frustrated. I can't remember who goes where. Palamon is peaceful. So our seat goes to the temple of Mars, bloodthirsty for his cousin's life. Palamon goes to this peaceful place, just wanting the girl, just wanting to get the girl. And it's a scary place that our seat goes. I step into a place like that, I don't want to ask for anything. I just want to turn around and leave, It's kind of is kind of disturbing. Do you like the way it ended? Did it end in a satisfactory way, in a mentally and an emotionally pleasing way? Our seat did die, but he did get his wish. He goes down having won the battle. Did you wish it had ended in a different way? I guess I'll ask that. Or was it just like emotionally satisfying? Everything turned out the way it should. I mean, this is an opinion. I'm not fishing for something. I'm just wondering.
I don't know. Emily was kind of like, she's kind of like, oh, whoever loves me most, but it was like her first pick. But it
Yeah.
seemed so, it just felt really weird. I mean, the matrimony part and all that was great and all that stuff. But like, I don't know.
Just seemed off to you.
It seems off, kind of dead.
Yeah,
Because
it seemed like I didn't feel satisfied after I read it. I was just like, but I couldn't think of like anything else that would have been like, I would have felt satisfied with that.
Yeah.
Like it was just kind of
I
like,
think it's just awkward in our time. Back then, I think it'd probably be a very satisfactory ending. Heroic, like all these things. Like I think it would have been like very good for the time that was set in. But for us today, it's a lot different. And it's looking more of like a weirder way, and we're like, that's not what we see.
and
Like betrothing, like that's
Mhm,
awkward.
mhm.
It's weird. We could have had her not betrothed, and she chooses who she wants.
Yeah.
Or the war didn't need to happen, or
I suppose that's what we do today. We'd say, which one do you want, Emily? We wouldn't have Theseus arrange a fight over her. But so maybe we would say this story doesn't age well for us, if you know what I mean. That in its time, maybe it wouldn't have been weird, but now we have a sensibility that sort of doesn't like the idea that other people arrange weddings and we don't arrange them for ourselves. Or we fight for people instead of just like winning their love through some sort of peaceful means. All right. For next week, read the stories that I have indicated. And if there is a prologue, if I've forgotten one, The Wife of Bath has that super long one. If anybody else has a prologue, it's only a few lines, like half a page or something like that, and it'll be right there. But if it says so-and-so's prologue, go ahead and read that with that tale. We have 2 minutes left, but I'm going to just get into that unless anybody has something you want to bring. Oh, any questions on the papers? Hopefully everyone has begun. You could, if you're on a path to get done, should have done 3 or 4 paragraphs, worked on 3 or 4 paragraphs. And that doesn't mean, some people like to just outline the whole thing before they start writing. Do you see what I mean? So that's just as an average. I'm not saying you have to literally write out. So some of you might want to spend 2/3 of the time outlining and getting ideas and then just crank it out in a few days. Like that's fine. But just, you should have made some start on it. And if you haven't, you really should. I'm just telling this for your own peace of mind and comfort, so that you're not wigging out at the very end. Is there anything else anything we need to talk about or business? I don't think so. We'll have one more week of Canterbury Tales. That's all. Please, I hope that maybe this summer, if you're really bored or something, you'll pull out your Canterbury Tales and read some of the other ones. Some of them are quite saucy, but I'm not going to tell you which ones because you'll go right to those. I'll let you find those in your own good time, like everybody else does. What to say about that? I am in the process of reading Hamlet on camera, so that we're going to read Hamlet after this, and Henry V. And you read Henry V with me years ago, but I'm going to do a much better job this time. Also, because I forgot to tell you like who Henry was until the last 2 minutes of class that week, or something was terrible. But I'm reading it so that if you want to, you can read along with me. And I stop and explain things. I'm 3 acts in. Okay, and I do encourage you to go ahead and get a movie. I should put that in next week's. You can just jot a note to yourself before I let you go. So Hamlet's coming up, and I highly recommend. The one I know the best, there's 2 versions. There's the BBC version. They did the complete works of Shakespeare, and Derek Jacobi is Hamlet. He's the best actor in the whole wide world. And there's another one, and it's Hamlet by Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh. It's 4 hours long or something like that. And this is great. Derek Jacobi is Hamlet in this one, and he's the king in this. He plays a different part. But this one has this is a warning symbol. This is my warning. Um, it has some nudity and some like sudden violence. So I like use caution. You're all older, but it's an awesome version of Hamlet. But this one's totally clean. Like it involves murder, but you know, this one's fine. And it's a very good version. But you might want to, like look at the library. Or I have heard that BritBox, if any of you have access to BritBox, that all the BBC plays are available on BritBox. You have cable or whatever, that's a streaming service, whatever that is. Or like check out the local libraries and see if you can get it. I would love for you guys to watch these. We're going to read them, but that's weird and unnatural. These were not meant to be read out of a book. They were meant to be acted out on a stage. If I had you every day as my students, we'd act out some of it. And we just don't have time in an hour and a half. Maybe, you know what, maybe we'll do some dramatic reading back and forth across the table that day. I'm considering spending 2 weeks on it instead of one. But anyway, I'm telling you all of this so that if you are interested, and I highly encourage you to see a video version, start seeking one out, because if you get it from the library, it might take some time. Mel Gibson made a Hamlet. I've never seen it. Glenn Close is his mother, Gertrude. I don't know anything about it. I can't tell you it's a great one or not a great one. I have no knowledge, but it might be widely available too. So just keep that in mind, because next week when I send you away, it's going to be to go read Hamlet. And it might be wonderful in that 2 weeks if you could get a hold of a copy. Okay? Otherwise, have a wonderful week. Hopefully it will not keep snowing forever.
It will.